Hi there, it's Lauren. It's time for another Whimsy Stamps video. I'm going to be sharing how I created a shaker card, mixing some previously released Halloween goodies as well as some of the new ones. I have the new Jeepers Creepers stamp set and this adorable Halloweeds stamp set as well. I've stamped the large image from the Halloweeds stamp set using some alcohol marker friendly black ink, and I have stamped it onto some really great blending cardstock, and I'm just going to show how I colored in some of my images. So my skulls and my eyeball, I used a light gray and just blended it out with a colorless blender. For the leaves of my skull and pumpkin and inside of the jar as well, I use some shades of green. And then for that fun little leaf in there, I'm using more of a teal green color. The pumpkin and the orange of my candy corn are of course colored in with orange, and I'm also going to color it in with a kind of golden yellow color, as I need to definitely add some more shades of orange to my collection, but I think it looks really good at the end once those colors have kind of blended together. The yellow I am using for my candy corn as well as some of the flowers inside the jar. I'm also grabbing a coral color to add kind of red lines to my eyeball so it looks very spooky. I'm using green for the color of the eyeball because my eyes are green, and I thought I'm going to color it like if it was my eyeball. And then I am bringing out a pale blue color to color in my jar, and I'm going to use a colorless blender just to kind of blend it out and soften the lines because I wanted my jar to look more like it had a blue glow to it more than coloring it in with blue. For the ground, I decided to go with kind of a dirt color, so I'm just going to use two shades of brown. I'm using my lighter one first to put down an overall kind of wash of color, and then I'm going to bring in a darker shade and just kind of speckle in to create texture of dirt into that lighter brown color. And then again, bringing the lighter one in to blend it out and kind of soften those harsher lines from speckling on brown. And then one more time, but instead of the brush, I'm going to use my nib and just add in more texture. And my little bushes were also colored in green, just like my leaves, and I'm going to fussy cut that out. Now my Jeepers Creepers stamp set, I am using some large scissors to cut all of my images apart. Yes, I am cutting my stamp, but it's a rubber stamp and it can definitely handle being cut up into different pieces. So now I don't have to worry about masking anything. I have a piece of cardstock that is slightly smaller than A2. I think it's a 1/4 inch smaller on both sides, so it would be 4 by 5 1/4. And I decided to use some Distress Oxide to stamp in that large cluster of eyeballs. So I'm going with a light shade of purple, milled lavender, and I'm just going to stamp this all over this piece of paper, just trying to create a repeating background as much as I can. I'm not too worried about overlapping or anything because it's a background, so I did that all along as much as I could. And then I'm taking my large eyeball and I'm going to stamp in to fill in the spaces anywhere where there's a large opening in between any of my stamped images. And then I'm going to bring in the smaller eyeball and do the same thing. Just want to really have a nice full background of eyeballs. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to bring out my splatter box and we're going to add some splatter and sparkle to this background. So I have picked out 3 different colors to splatter. So I'm just going to put this in my splatter box, and you can create splatter by purchasing splatter already bottled up like I do, or you can also smush some ink onto a piece of acetate and spray it with water and just use a paintbrush and splatter ink onto your background. This is really great with any of the oxides as well. So now that I'm going to set that aside to dry, we're going to create our frame for our shaker. I have my rounded rectangle dies and I absolutely love these for creating a frame. So I'm taking the 2 largest ones. I'm going to do my best to center those as best as I can, and I'm bringing out some repositional tape just to help me hold those together while I run this through my die cut machine. And the reason why I really love this die set when it comes to making frames is because on both sides of that die cut line, there's this really cute kind of dashed line to create a border around the die. So on the inside and the outside. So when I create a frame, it is on both sides of my frame and I just love it. I'm going to get a piece of acetate, and instead of measuring, I'm just going to grab my large scissors and just kind of snip where I need to cut my acetate. So it's a little off camera, but I'm cutting it on the vertical line, and then now I'm going to cut horizontally and then take it over to my paper trimmer and cut that rectangle out. Now, because my frame has rounded corners and my acetate has sharp 90-degree corners, I'm just going to come in and trim off the corners for each corner. So all 4 of those, I'm just trimming off a little bit so it will hide behind my frame. And once that's ready, we're going to start gluing and putting it all together. So I have some double-sided adhesive, and I'm just going to line the back of my frame with this adhesive, burnish it down, and then peel off the release paper. And before I add my acetate, I'm going to add my image to the back of the frame. I want it to look like my image is inside of the frame. I'm going to grab some scissors and I'm just going to trim underneath my purple frame to trim off any of that excess white cardstock. There is not adhesive all the way on the edge of my purple, so it was really easy just to kind of slide my scissors in there and trim it off. I'm going to add that double-sided adhesive again along the edge and peel off the release paper and then adhere my acetate to the frame. I also, well, before I glue that down, I'm getting out my wet glue and adding it behind my cute colored in image here so that way it will stick to the acetate. I didn't really want to peel off more of that double-sided adhesive, so I went with wet glue for the image, but I just wanted to make sure that acetate was nice and secure, so I went with the double-sided adhesive just around the frame. Now I am trying to get off some excess glue that kind of came out from under my pumpkin, and we're going to put my foam strips on around the edge of my frame. So these are thick foam strips, so I don't have to worry about doubling up, and I'm going to peel off a little bit of my release paper so I can curve my foam strips around my curvy parts of my frame. I'm making sure that every time I add a new piece of this foam adhesive strip, I am making sure that there is a nice snug connection. We want to make sure there are no openings and no area for our shaker bits to fall out of. I'm going to also put some along the edge of my kind of dirt ground that I colored in on my image. Again, making sure that there is no way for any shaker bits to escape. And then also an extra piece at the bottom just to make sure there is good support behind my shaker. I'm going to pull off all of my release paper and I'm going to bring out my creepy Sparkletz blend that you can get from the Whimsy stamp store. I am going to separate these out because I want my large pumpkins and spiders to be kind of the main part of my shaker. So I'm going to pull all those out and then also add in some of the seed beads as well as some of the rhinestones and pearls. I'm really excited about this shaker mix inside of this shaker. Now my spiders were super staticky. They kept sticking to my fingers, so I'm going to use my anti-static tool inside of my shaker window and then use my Swiffer to make sure I don't have a ton of powder left over. And I'm going to use my grid mat to help me center this shaker to the center of my eyeball background piece. I'm going to make sure that all of my foam strips are nice and secure against my background, give it a good shake, and I'm really happy with how it's turning out. I'm going to clean up my workspace a little bit here, and I'm going to use my wet glue to add some glue to the back of my eyeball background, and I'm going to glue that to the center of an A2 top folding white cardstock base. And there we go, there's our shaker. It's moving around and it looks really great. I'm going to stamp my sentiment Happy Halloweeds on the inside of my card, and there was still a little bit of ink left on my eyeballs, so I just stamped those as well. Here is a final look at this fun Halloweeds shaker card. I sure hope you liked how this card came together. If you did, make sure you click that like button. You can find everything I use down below in the description, including a link to the Whimsy Stamps store. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to our channel, we hope you'll hit subscribe and come back and check out more Whimsy Stamps videos. You can also find us on Pinterest, Instagram, and our Facebook group for even more inspiration for this Halloween season.